Hi, Strange Groove listeners. This is Ian from Locarius, and I'm here with Biffy, my social media support animal, and we wanted to let you know that Locarius is Canada's best ticketing platform. If you go to locarius.io and you book a demo, you could save 15% on your platform fees for 2 years. So come on over and come meet the team from Atlantic Canada, and maybe you'll get to meet Biffy too. Hope you enjoy this episode. Talk later.
Welcome back, strange crew. You are tuned into another trip through life's deep cuts. We hope you enjoy the ride.
Keep it strange.
One. Rolling.
Welcome back, Strange Crew. We are so excited to have Noah, aka Polyphonic, on YouTube and socials with us. One of my personal favorite content creators in the music space. So excited. Trying not to fangirl. Welcome, Noah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
She's been talking about this for a while, and she sent me the video that you did about Steely Dan because I'm a big Dan fan.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Love
it's
that.
funny, that was like really perfect. Okay. But no, she's been really excited to talk to you, and we've been watching your content. And yeah, no, it's going to be a good Wednesday, good hump day when you can have a good chat with like a fellow music like person. So this is great. Thanks so much for allocating some time for us today.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. It's going to be fun.
So you're in for a treat. Let's go.
Let's do it. So I guess the first question that we always ask people like in our show is sort of how did you first get into music? But I kind of want to pose it a bit differently to you. I guess when was that moment for you? Was there like a song or was there an artist where you started looking at it not just like, oh, this is a dope song, but like you started thinking about it like from an analytical lens and like started looking at like, what this artist or this song meant like in the larger cultural context? Because that's like something that you're so good and brilliant at doing in your content. So when did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think where it really started for me was with punk. I got really into punk as a teenager. Shout out to Gotta Rep the CanCon. Super into Billy Talent and Sum 41. Yeah. Those were two of my favorite early bands. And I was born in 1993, so American Idiot came out when I was 11 years old. So that was a pretty big one, especially in terms of kind of like relating that to everything going on in the world. And kind of, I had like a tween's understanding of American politics, but it was enough to understand, oh, they're actually talking about something here. And then System of a Down as well, similar time, similar kind of topics. So yeah, I think specifically getting into the kind of analyzing music, looking into meaning, it was a lot of that, early 2000s kind of anti-Bush protest stuff. I specifically remember I think it was the 8th grade, doing a school project where you needed to do a lyrical analysis, and I did it on BYOB by System of a Down. And so that I think might have been, the first real step down the road to doing what I do.
That is so cool. I'm a 92 baby as well. So I was there with you when American Idiot came out, and Kate, you probably remember as well. Like, I don't know. It was like this moment of like, it was like a first look at music as like an act of rebellion. Right. And I think when you're like 11, 12, 13, you don't fully grasp it, but it's like a first look at music kind of standing for something.
And it was for me very much like a first time listening to something my parents didn't listen to, like I grew up in a pretty musical household. But yeah, that they were very much not really into punk. And it was something like my older brother showed me. And it sort of was one of those first albums that for me was like my own. And I think that's such a special thing when you're a kid to be like, you're always kind of in any kind of media, you're looking for something that you can kind of latch an identity onto and be like, this is me. I am my own human being. And American Idiot was very much that for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I feel like you might be on the same, because I know you like obviously older music too, and that's what I grew up listening to, like the Beatles, and like I was listening to like the 60s protest tunes and stuff when I was like 10, 11, and then but it was like, oh, that was in the past, and like well, that stuff was coming to during the Vietnam War, and then having this album come out when there was sort of another big like American war coming, it was like, oh wow, like we're kind of experiencing another movement like that. So it's kind of a, yeah, it was a pivotal album when you think about it for the time.
And everything, does evolve too, because if you think about it, like I remember like growing up, my dad, he was always into like the Sex Pistols and like just like a bunch of different music, right? And he was very all about like don't corner yourself into a genre. If you say you don't like something, it's probably evolved from something else. So he always used country music as an example. It's like you may not like Alan Jackson, but you might love Johnny Cash. So it just depends.
Yeah.
And his thing was that a lot of people who were singing in punk rock really fucking knew what they were talking about. We might seem and look misunderstood, but we actually have a lot of the facts and can articulate ourselves better than anyone and actually have a longing for that knowledge, right? And I think music, when you start looking at Green Day and System of a Down and like bands that we felt connected to and we could physically touch, made us want to go that extra mile. And maybe we did feel more misunderstood and removed from policy and what was going on, because you can't do anything about it, but you can be united about it and you can be informed, right? And I think music, for me, it was Nirvana when I was a kid and like AC/DC, but everybody loved them. So I had to find something that was weird. So I found Primus.
I was a big Primus fan in high school as well. Actually, I play the bass. Yep. So I was pretty naturally drawn to Les Claypool. And yeah, that was when I was like a little older, when I was in like, I think 10th and 11th grade, I was super, super into Primus. And yeah, Primus was one for me where it's like, that was one where nobody I knew was into Primus. And I would
party and be like, hey, I got something to show you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. But when you said the System of a Down, that's super cool. Because, they really still, even today, in what they're talking about, and even not making music today as a band around politics, it's really interesting to see what economy, the presidency, what is done to people who used to make music about these very things.
Yeah.
So
they're
No, go ahead.
Oh, there's such an interesting case of a band that even themselves have kind of been fractured by our current political moment, because Serj Tankian is obviously still like incredibly leftist, incredibly political, but some of the other members have come out like in vocal support of Trump or stuff like that, which seems very, I don't know, counter to the music they were making, but that's how it goes, I guess.
You see a lot of that too with a lot of artists, especially like it's interesting. It's kind of weird to maybe see it with more recent artists like System of a Down, but even like artists from the 70s, right, that were really big and that were kind of a part of that counterculture, revolution in music. And then now that they're old, they say you get more conservative when you're older, and some people are very examples of that.
Yeah, a big one that was that really hurt me, I took hard, was when Van Morrison went anti-vax. That one was tough.
Yeah, that was difficult.
Yeah. So I guess take us to sort of, how did Polyphonic, the channel, start? So when did you start becoming like a content creator? Did it start with videos, or did you start with blogging? Like, sort of tell us a little bit about the evolution of you kind of creating content around talking about music like this.
Yeah, so before Polyphonic, my first kind of endeavor into music content. So in my undergrad, I studied journalism, and I did some like writing for the school paper, did reviews for the school paper, wanted to go into being a music journalist. And so in my undergrad, I started a podcast. It was called Brews and Tunes. There's old episodes still up there if you ever want to dig up my archives. It was, so at the time there was kind of the craft beer explosion was kind of happening in Ottawa. And so I had this podcast where the concept was each week you bring a different craft beer to a local indie musician and interview them as they drink the beer and get them to review the beer and then record a little set of them playing. And it was a super fun experience. It was definitely something where I was a little in over my head with it. But that's part of the fun. We did that for a couple months. And then it kind of ended up falling apart because it was a team of a couple of us, and we were university students, and no one was getting paid, and it just kind of fell apart, as these projects sometimes do. And so after it kind of fell apart, I was sort of interested in doing something that I could just do solo, because I found I really love making content. I love talking about music. I really don't like managing people. So I kind of yeah, exactly.
And I manage people now. It's so hard.
Yeah, so I was kind of looking for sort of what was going to be next, what my next project was. At the time I was working for a company that was developing a music companion app that would kind of pull up facts about music as you listen to it, kind of similar to stuff that Spotify does now. I don't know actually what happened with the company, but I got I started getting really into YouTube video essays. They were kind of popping off. I was watching a lot of like the Nerd Writer and Captain Christian and stuff like this. And I was watching a lot of these, and there's kind of a handful of those videos about music, but mostly they were about film, which makes sense. It's a video essay, kind of film makes sense. And so I was kind of watching a lot of this and started thinking, man, I would really love a channel like this about music. And then I was like, well, I have the passion, I have the skill set. Like, I know how to edit video, I know how to edit audio. Like, I know how to do research. Like, I've got all of these kind of journalistic skills that I learned in J school. And I was like, well, shit, I guess I'm the person to do it. So I kind of, I started my channel on a whim, put out a couple of videos, and then one of my early ones sort of blew up and went super viral. And that happened just as I was getting kind of laid off from my past job. And so it was pretty serendipitous, because as it was blowing up, I was getting some kind of ad revenue. I had a bit of savings. I was like, okay, let's try to treat this like a real job for a couple months. And if I burn through my savings, then I'll look for another job. And if I don't, then this will become my job. And lo and behold, that was 7.5 years ago, I think now, which is crazy.
That's crazy. What was the video? What was the one that went viral?
My John Bonham one.
Yeah.
I think it has like 17 million views now or something, which is stupid.
Well, we'll add it, and we'll make sure our crew watches it even more. Get those ad dollars up, stranger. Oh,
nah, I don't like people watching my old stuff. They can watch my more recent stuff. I very much like relate to artists that don't want to play the hits when I think about like that video, because it's like I did that video when I was 23 years old. It was like the third video I'd made. There's 1,000 things I do differently for it now, and it is for better or worse my legacy. Like, there's no way I will ever get a video that has that many views. So it's I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Do you know what you should do? Sorry, because this is my marketing hat that's coming on. I love watching reaction videos, and they're huge right now.
Yeah.
Kate listens to whatever song for the first time, and it's crazy, right? What if you did a split screen of you reacting to you watching that video, and just piggyback off the original link, because then that's still feeding into your ad dollars.
That's interesting.
Right? And you could even get like a couple close buds or something that you've had in other videos or something to like kind of like also ham it up and be on the screen. So Stranger, if you see the video, make sure you're clicking and liking, because I want to see that. I think it'd be fun.
That's fun. I like that. I've never thought of that. I have thought about doing kind of like remastered versions where I kind of like take these early topics and rewrite them and redo visuals and stuff like that. But I like that reaction idea. That's very fun.
Because then it's also like the people like, Sharice, who followed you for a really long time, who've seen that, you would come back and be like, hey, after 7 years, here's 7 things I learned, just not even just the creator, but also about him as an artist or about the band, right?
Yeah.
That I really wanted you to do. So it's kind of your part 2, and you could add your own little nuance at the end.
That's very fun. I like that.
There you go. Bam. Business calls.
Strange Gears episodes often turn into like marketing and things, which I don't
love that.
It's great. That's great. I guess how do you go, so like looking at your channel, you've covered so many different genres, different topics. Like I loved your series. Like I binged the other week your whole series on the evolution of the music video, which was
Oh,
so
thank
well
you.
done. Everyone should watch it. And you've covered everything. Like speaking of Led Zeppelin, one of the ones that I thought you did incredibly well was kind of a retrospective on sort of the darker side of Led Zeppelin, sort of debusting the myth and looking at them as men and some of the problematic things that went down. And I think the way you handled that was so nuanced and like, I don't know, I haven't seen or read anything about that topic that was quite like yours. So first of all, kudos for that. Everyone
Thank
just
you.
everyone
Thank
just
you.
binge Polyphonic. And I guess for you, how do you go about finding these topics? Like you don't seem to, and what I love about your channel is that you never seem to pigeonhole yourself into just classic rock or anything like that, or one genre or artist. So how do you go about what interests you?
Yeah, I mean, the lack of pigeonholing is very much intentional. I've always wanted to do stuff from across the musical spectrum, and honestly, like most often, you know, every now and then there will be a topic where it's just like I know this one will do well, and you know, I do it for the fans, but most often it's just sort of whatever I'm kind of listening to and thinking about. I try to find an angle on. Often, you know, it's just like I'll be like having conversation, you know, having friends over, having a couple beers, having conversations, and some musician will come up and that'll kind of be the spark of an idea in my head. I have ADHD, so I hyperfixate on songs a lot. And frequently when I hyperfixate on a song or an album, it turns into a polyphonic. It's not often it's sort of a process where I always have ideas. I've got a dozen ideas, a dozen songs that I want to do running in the back of my head at any time. And, you know, my brain will kind of process them and work through them slowly. And then eventually the dam will break and I'll be like, okay, I actually like really need to do this one. Or, you know, sometimes the idea will go and I'll poke around a little and be like, do a bit of preliminary research and discover, there's not that much of a story there, or there's a story there, but it's actually different than what I thought the angle was. That's always fun when I kind of think that I have an angle and then I'm like, oh no, there's actually a way more interesting story this way or that way. But yeah, generally it's the music I listen to, and also kind of that, because I'm always tied to history and politics and what's going on. I do try to kind of speak to the moment sometimes, but my philosophy is always, and this has proven me right so far, is if it's interesting to me, chances are it's going to be interesting to somebody else. I'm not that special of a person. You know, there's definitely some things that I'd love to talk about more, especially more Canadian music that I don't really get to talk about. But for the most part, like, yeah, I think if I think something's interesting, somebody else is going to think it's interesting too.
Absolutely. Can concur, because I find
The other interesting thing too is when you think about like when we were in, you know, middle school, high school, like for me, like I'm a few years older than you guys, but for me, like I remember it was even hard to get like a guitar magazine to get photos of your favorite bands. And we had just gotten into tech class that had black and white printers. So we would go on when the internet was available. I think it was like grade 8 for me. So we're probably talking like 2001, 2002. And we would go and we would like go behind our teacher's back and print out like pictures of No Effects, Nirvana, like all these different bands, right? Because there wasn't YouTube for us to find out other people who were making videos about music that we might like. So if you like these bands, so now it's really cool because even if it's not something that you love, right? It could be something very simple, but that keyword search is bringing up to new eyeballs, right? Every day that may have never found the band otherwise.
Yeah.
And I know I found a lot of my favorite bands through creators, through really funny alt channels on TV years ago, and just through like subsequent like playlists and stuff. So like people need people like us to create things so that they're knowing what's out there, right? And it helps the bands too.
And I'm a big believer in human curation. I really don't like recommendations algorithms. You know, they're a fact of life. We all deal with them constantly, but especially when it comes to music, I find often recommendations algorithms can kind of fall flat and trap you into sort of cycles of stuff. So I really value, I listen to podcasts. I listen to the radio. I love the radio. Anytime I'm out driving around, I'll listen to the radio, and I put a lot of value on kind of the role of humans curating music for other humans, because the other thing too is, I talk about this a lot, like I don't tend to try to think of music in terms of genre, but more in terms of like vibe. Like my playlists
Right.
generally have an energy or even like a subject matter flow that kind of jumps across genre. And I think that that's something that a lot of kind of recommendations algorithms do are a lot worse at, because they're kind of built on genre tags and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that there's nothing wrong with genre, and it's a useful tool, but I think that there can be a flattening of music, and you can kind of like, it can kind of brush over, songs that you might love that don't typically fit into like the genre that you would consider. So I think, I really value kind of human musical curation, and the joy of just like having friends recommend stuff to you, or having a podcast or radio show you like. I think it's really special.
Yeah, it's a little more like, the word sounds douchey, but it is a little more authentic, right? When someone like, oh, I saw this. Like, I remember going into CD stores and just buying it because the art was metal as fuck.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Cannibal Corpse CDs and like shirts, because like they were insane, and I loved it. And then eventually, like, I was like, let's listen to these 25 track death metal albums, and I ended up loving it. Right. So it's funny how we find music and how it ends up in our lives. Right. And I think you're right. You have to have that human curation where people say like, hey, you might like this, and you might end up hating it. But it's that notion of like people just trying to, that is special. Right. And we're finding that less now. People are about sounds and quick formats of content, and, their attention spans, like, as we know with ADHD, they're harder to keep. So you really have to have someone that keeps your attention and hits all the I's and T's for you to get a follow and to keep your subscribers. So it's hard, but you kind of got to be broad sometimes to help people find new things. That's kind of what we do. We just keep it broad.
Well, one of my kind of strategies, and some of my favorite videos that I can do, is often I like to kind of do a bit of bait and switch, where I get people in the door with the promise of, something that they know and something that they like. And then I can kind of, my ultimate example for this is my video on House of the Rising Sun, where it's like one of the things that I really like to talk about, like one of my favorite kind of aspects of music is I love folk song. I love kind of the history of folk song and how folk song is kind of built into the roots of American popular music and all of this. And House of the Rising Sun is this great thing where, because of my videos that have blown up, like dad rock kind of does best on my channel, which there's nothing wrong with dad rock. I love lots of dad rock, but House of the Rising Sun kind of gets a lot of those people into the door, and then I can kind of backdoor them into this meditation on the way that folk songs evolve and kind of the evolution of American music through history and that sort of stuff. So that's it's always my favorite when I can kind of get someone through the door. A similar one I did recently. I did the same thing with Cotton Eye Joe recently, which was super fun. Like I really like getting people in the door, and then having them leave the video having learned something they had no expectations to learn, having learned about like change their perspective on the way music works. Really, like that's my favorite.
Yeah, one of my ones that I love that you did, it was and it was so cool. It's like the first song ever made, or the first recorded.
The oldest song
the oldest song and it was just how the amount of research and stuff. So how do you go about, like, when you take on a topic like that? What's the research process like?
I mean, so these days I have a research assistant who does a lot of my research help. Shout out to Matt. He's fantastic. So often he does a lot of my research. He's great at, like, he'll like pull library books and like really go deep on stuff. When he's not doing it, it's very similar stuff. Like I said, I was trained as a journalist. You learn how to research quite a bit in that. It's a lot of looking through, depending on the topic. Interviews are very, very kind of like very common. I'll spend a day just watching 30 interviews with an artist, kind of looking to pull quotes that work, old magazine scans, things like that. But then also, yeah, I will frequently, go into looking into scholarly research. Like, often a good kind of jumping point for a lot of research. And it gets a lot of flack because a lot of people use it as an endpoint, but Wikipedia is an incredible resource. It's just, the problem is that you need to, like, the way to use Wikipedia is you look at the summaries, but then you jump into the citations and you get your hands dirty actually reading the citations. And there's certain things, and I'll find this all the time in my research, where you'll have like a quote in Wikipedia or a fact that you kind of, as you trace down and go into these clicks, you realize it's just kind of a circle of a bunch of websites referring to each other as sources with no kind of original source. So I always try to be very, like, especially in recent years, I think I was a little more lax in my first couple years just because I didn't know as well. But I really try to be sure about, like, okay, if I'm quoting somebody saying something to the Rolling Stone, I want to find a scan of that Rolling Stone thing, or I want to find it, if someone's referenced in a book, I want to find a page of that book on Google Books and find that actual quote. Like, I do try to be quite rigorous with this stuff, because the more and more I've done it, the more there's stuff that I just kind of took as kind of rote knowledge that that is completely like one in last year, or I guess 2 years ago, I did a video on the history of the guitar solo, and there's this like quote that I had heard a million times and I had just taken as fact. That the story goes, there's an interview with Jimi Hendrix where someone asks, what's it like to be the greatest guitarist alive? And Hendrix says, I don't know, ask Rory Gallagher. There's also a version that I think has him saying that about Phil Leach, and those don't exist. That interview does not exist. It's possible he said something similar to that, but like I could not. Matt and I scoured the internet for like an actual proof of this quote, and it does not exist. So I couldn't use that, like, it's so I really do value like actually digging into research and finding primary sources and stuff like that. Like, it is something that I put a lot of weight into.
That's true music journalism right there. And it's also it's interesting because you think, especially in like the mythology of rock and roll music, right? We all have heard stories, right? That.
Yeah.
But it's like being able to verify it, and when you really dig deep down, you realize a lot of this stuff is either embellished or didn't happen at all.
Yeah, I think like mythology is a very key word when we talk, especially about kind of classic rock mythology. There's so much kind of like, and even beyond, fans and media outlets doing it, like rock stars themselves are nothing if not like self-mythologizing, right? There's so many of these stories where it's like you can't trust a thing Bob Dylan says about himself. Like he absolutely just loves kind of lying and playing with the media and stuff like that. So you got to be very wary with this stuff. Otherwise you risk kind of perpetuating these common myths.
Well, I mean, there's lots of those going around about like Maynard and Marilyn Manson and the crazy things that they did.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just like crazy stuff. And you're just like, man, the more we perpetuate these things, like it's not true. These things didn't happen, right? It's just right? The more we tell it, or if we don't correct it, that ends up being like the new version of history, right? So it's important to have something that you can concrete back. And when you're talking about those entities, man, people are suing everybody for anything nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not right and you just put something out just for fun, like you could have something taken down or have someone come after you. So you got to make sure you're doing that due diligence.
Well, and that's something that like I've kind of like in my years of doing this kind of come to acknowledge and realize where it's like, oh yeah, I actually, like I have a voice in kind of the canon and the collective kind of history of popular music as we know it. And that's something that I don't take lightly. It's something a couple of years back, and like the end of 2019, I kind of had a realization, like looking at my channel, which was 2 or 3 years old at the time, where I was like, oh, if you looked at my channel as a kind of like overview of, you know, music history, you'd think almost all music was made by white dudes, you know, like, like I took it upon myself to try to tell more stories of marginalized communities and find more ways of doing stuff like that kind of Zeppelin retrospective. Like I do take seriously, you know, and like, I don't want to have like an inflated head about this. You know, I'm not Chris Gower or anything. Like there are much bigger faces and voices in determining music, but I do play a part in this, creating this culture, creating our narratives, creating our understandings of how these figures fit within history. And yeah, that's something that I try to be conscious of. At least I hope I'm conscious of it.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
One question I had for you that you touched on a while ago, you mentioned that one of the things that you'd like to maybe do more of is Canadian music.
Yes.
What's an artist or a song that's Canadian that you would want to do a deep dive in right now?
I mean, so one, I might even do it soon. The obvious answer to this is the Hip. I have this video idea in my head where the title is "Why You Should Listen to the Tragically Hip Even If You Aren't Canadian," because I think anytime people talk about the Hip, it's always framed within this kind of Canadiana, and it's so seldom, you know, it talks about, you know, they talk about specific Canadian references and Wheat Kings and 50 Mission Cap, and nobody ever actually just talks about the fact that like Gord Downie writes incredibly human songs, very sort of universal stuff that, you know, touches on resonates a lot. Beyond that, I mean, some artists, Snotty Nose Res Kids, I think are doing incredible stuff, and it would be awesome to talk about them, but I just don't think it would work well on my platform, at least not for now. I had another one. Who was I going to say? Oh, I mean, another one that was essential for me growing up. Like I was raised on Blue Rodeo, and I have a lot of thoughts on Blue Rodeo. I think that they don't get the kind of celebration they deserve. I've done a little bit on Gordon Lightfoot. I love Gordon Lightfoot, big Gordon Lightfoot fan.
That's what I wrote down for you.
Excellent.
I think here's another idea for you. Yeah. If we're looking at things, when people are looking at history and things, right? Like, I don't know if did you see the new Lost Together Blue Rodeo doc?
I haven't watched it yet. I've seen that it's around. I haven't watched it yet.
It's on YouTube and it's on CBC, but you'll really love it. Take an hour and 20 minutes later to go watch it. You will love it. It's beautiful and it's shot beautifully well. It's amazing. But if you think about Gordon Lightfoot, like his music's used in films all over the world, right? Like you hear of like, you know, If You Could Read My Mind is popular, yes, but like the record of the Edmund Fitzgerald is in like, it was just played in the studio on Apple with Seth Rogen. They played in the second episode.
I actually saw that. Yeah.
And so there's this lore with that, but you know, my dad used to say it's one of the best songs ever written, you know, how it was written for families, how he changed the lyrics, you know. I think it's important I don't think we're learning that in school and social studies anymore. So it would be great for people to have like something in a way of younger people being able to resonate and learn that history.
Yeah, my mom grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, and our family cottage is actually like right by where the Edmund Fitzgerald went down. So it's a very powerful song for me. The other song of his that I've always really loved, I think Black Day in July is an underrated song about it's an interesting one because it's a Canadian artist writing very much about an American event, you know, like the Detroit riots. But I think that song is incredible. And when Gordon Lightfoot died, I did do a video kind of commemorating him. But yeah, I would like to dive into him more. And yeah, I think there's I don't know. I think there's so many kind of smaller Canadian artists, especially in the singer-songwriter stuff. Amelia Curran is another one that I really love, doing the kind of poetic singer-songwriter stuff where there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, I'm working on. I might start doing. I always have ideas for things that I want to do, but I might start doing like a series of shorts,
Yeah.
kind of shouting out Canadian deep cuts. Like, here's a Canadian deep cut that I think you should listen to. Oh, another one of my favorites that I absolutely love are July Talk. I think they're so good. They're
Great people too.
incredible live. Like,
Yeah. And just nice.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you gotta look at
yeah,
them, they're like good people to hang out with. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
You gotta watch that Blue Rodeo doc. Have you watched the it's a 4-part series on Amazon called No Dress Rehearsal with the Hip?
I haven't watched that either yet,
Yeah.
but I've
Oh,
seen
Mark.
it again. It's
Good.
I'm back on.
And it goes,
I-
it
I'm-
really goes into like Gord's love of punk rock music and how they first started writing those first few songs, and how like
That's
you know,
awesome.
the U.S. didn't really adopt their music, no matter how hard they were really trying. It was
Yeah.
Canada and Europe, and it was when they figured out like we could just tell stories. It doesn't have to be so Canadian focused. We can just tell stories about life, and people in America, people in Europe, people can relate to life, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's something. If you're thinking about it, you should watch that. It's really good, and it's
I
just
definitely will. Yeah,
and it's after Gord's pass, so it's interviews with the band. It's like I think they're about an hour and 10 minutes each, so it's almost 5 hours of content.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm actually I've got a bit of a backlog on my rock docs lately because there's a new Beatles one out on Disney too.
Yeah, so I heard about that.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So besides Polyphonic, we know you work on other projects as well, including a book, I guess. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And you also have a podcast too. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what else you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll do my podcast because it's quick. My podcast is called Ghost Notes. It's me and Corey from 12 Tone, another great music YouTuber. It is I similar to you guys. It's just kind of an excuse to talk about music. It's very very low key, very unstructured. The only kind of limitation in Ghost Notes is we try not to talk about specific artists, but try to talk more about music conceptually. You know, exploring kind of topics like if you're looking for a Ghost Notes episode to start, we probably my favorite episode we've done. We did an episode on children's music, which I thought was an interesting topic that not a lot of people kind of talk about. We also recently did an episode along with videos where we both did videos on Sympathy for the Devil, and we did a podcast episode talking about our kind of different processes and how we both came at the same song. I thought that was super fun to do. And then, yeah, my book, it is called Century of Song. It is a history of American popular music as told through 100 songs. So what I did is I took every year from 1923 to 2023, did I do 2024? No, to 2023, and picked one song to represent what happened in that year and what was going in that year aesthetically, historically, culturally, musically. There were some other limitations. I tried to do as many different genres as I could, and I did no repeat artists, so only so I could talk about as many people. But yeah, it's 101 little essays about songs that, when put together as the whole, kind of give you a history of American popular music from, it opens on like Bessie Smith and the early blues and goes all the way up to the last chapters on Doja Cat. So it really kind of like, runs the gamut and is, I like to think, kind of a great light sort of primer on the arc of American musical history.
That is amazing. So what made you, I guess, want to write that book?
So my publishers, Page Street Publishing, actually reached out to me, being fans of the channel, asking if I was interested in doing a book. I've always wanted to be an author. I actually write fiction as well, which that's my next step, is getting a fiction book published. But I've been working on that. But they reached out, and I was like, yeah, that seems interesting. So I gave them kind of a couple pitches. This idea just kind of came to me as I was thinking about what might be a fun book to write. And they really liked it. So yeah, we went ahead with it. And yeah, it was mostly just as simple as, the publisher liked my channel, were interested in getting a book from me, and I was interested in writing it. So yeah, I came up with this idea.
Yeah, Cool. Because like I feel like your channel is just full of like hundreds of book ideas, right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
curious you landed on that concept, which is great. Like it's a easy way to tackle like a really big topic in an interesting way.
Yeah, well, and what I like it can be read like it can be read front to back, and there's kind of a narrative. But what I like about it too is being able to just kind of pick it up, flip through, pick a year, and read 1,000 words on some random year. One of everyone's favorite thing to do, is figure out which song I chose for their birth year or things like that. Which song I chose for the year that they graduated high school or something like that. Like what they would have chosen for certain years. I thought it was a fun. It was definitely a bit of an undertaking, but it's like the final product. I like to think at least as kind of like a light primer on stuff that really. Like it's not a dense read. It's meant to be a super breezy read that can, maybe teach you some new stuff, maybe show you some new songs, and be a first stepping stone into if you want to dive deeper into some of this stuff. It's a great way to read and see what stories you find interesting.
Cool, that's great.
It's amazing. Well, Noah, it's been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. I feel like we need to have you back.
Would you have a part 2?
We need to have part 2. Like
yeah.
It's been so long. Like I watch your videos and I'm like, man, I'd love to just like have a few beer and smoke pot with this guy and talk music. And I'm so glad
we said this multiple times. That's why I said either we're gonna fly up to Ottawa, or when you're coming to the East Coast, we'll figure it out. Or we need to have regular business marketing podcast sessions, right? It's just
then the beers are right off.
Right.
And it's so funny. I didn't say this like earlier, but like I'm like, are we the same person? Because I also went to journalism school and wanted to be a music journalist. So I was just like, it's so interesting to hear your story.
Which school did you go to?
St. Thomas in Fredericton.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Did you go to Carleton?
Yeah, I went to Carleton. Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, no, again, so much more to talk about. It's been so great. So just for one more time, where can people find you if they want to hear more?
Yeah, my channel is Polyphonic on YouTube. I'm at Watch Polyphonic on most socials. I don't really do socials that much anymore. If you're going to follow me on socials, Blue Sky is probably where you're most likely to hit me, but I'm not very active on socials. My book is called Century of Song by Noah Lefevre. It's available wherever books are sold. It's in major retailers across North America. If you're gonna go to my channel, the video that I recommend people start with, I'm my biggest critic, but if you want a really good one to go watch, I did a video that is about the queer history of disco and the kind of homophobic backlash on disco, and I think it's some of the best work I've ever done. I think it's some of the work that is most important given everything that happens right now. So start off with that, and also hopefully it'll teach you to love disco if you don't, because more people should love disco.
People need to be exposed to genres that they don't listen to normally.
Yes,
and just even if you don't like it per se, like just to learn and appreciate the history behind it.
Well, one of my big kind of core philosophies and something behind everything I do at the channel is I don't think anyone can learn to like any genre, but I think most people can learn to like most genres, and it's a process of learning how to come at that music on its own terms, learning how to appreciate its cultural history, learning how to appreciate the kind of like aesthetic norms that it values and stuff like that. Like I really genuinely believe taste is very malleable, and people can and do learn how to like different musics all the time. So if there's a parting thought, I'd leave it at kind of take away from this, go try to get into something that you've never listened before. It's a rewarding experience.
On that note, thank you again, Noah, and thank you everyone for listening. And until next time,
keep it
strange.
Bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed this, then you have to hit strangegrooves.com for more amazing content. To support this podcast and music community, go to patreon.com/strangegrooves. As always, keep it strange.